Now let's talk about motion. If you have a subject that is moving, you now have a choice of either stopping the action or creating motion blur. You do this by changing your shutter speeds. A slow shutter speed will allow the subject to move while the photograph is being taken, which will create blur. A fast shutter speed will freeze the action. Now, to create motion blur, you're going to go to TV mode. And on TV mode, you're going to choose a shutter speed of a 60th or slower for most subjects. Of course, it depends on how fast the subject's moving. At a thousandth of a second, you'd still have blur if you were shooting a bullet. But for most things out in the world, slower than a 60th of a second is going to create motion blur. To create stop action, you can do it on TV mode and just pick a fast shutter speed. But it is best done by going to AV mode and using the same settings that you used for shallow depth of field. What happens when you open up that aperture? It lets in a lot of light, so the camera automatically picks that fast shutter speed for you. But what it avoids doing is picking a shutter speed that is too fast for a given lighting situation, where your picture just comes out too dark. So, let's go ahead and practice these. We're going to go back over here to our camera sim. And let's put down that camera for a second, and let's go find, we do have a moving subject over here. And let's zoom in. Let's pick our camera up first. Here we go. And I'm going to focus on her. I'm going to recompose that shot. I don't like keeping my subject right in the middle. And let's start with time variable mode and go into one of these slow shutter speeds. Let's slow it way down. Start with a 60th. And I'll have to push my aperture down to the point where my F number is not blinking, telling me that picture is going to be too bright. Let's take this picture. So at a 60th of a second, we get a little bit of a blur. Let's go slower. We'll go all the way down to a 15th of a second. You can see how much blur there is here in my subject now, but there's also a lot of blur in the background. If you look at my camera settings here, I'm at f22 and everything should be in focus. So that blurry background is not shallow depth of field. That actually is motion blur in my background as well. So I'm going to throw my camera on a tripod. And let's take that picture again. So now my background's sharper, and I think I was still moving the camera there a little bit. Let's try that one more time. Oop. There we go. Now the blur is just on our subject, and the background stayed sharp. We can even go slower, down to a 10th of a second. And there we have even more blur. So to freeze this action, we could, on time variable mode here, just go ahead and pick a fast shutter speed. I could go up to a 500th of a second without changing my ISO. And that froze everything. But if I wanted to go really fast for a particular subject, if I was shooting a sporting event, I could push my ISO up. And you can see now that I can choose a faster shutter speed. But on the chart, I did recommend for stop action using AV mode and choosing a smaller f number. So let's see what happens when we do that. If I go to AV mode, choose a small f number, you can see it automatically chose a really fast shutter speed. And I get my stop action shot. So that is how you control motion in your photographs.